Happy Friday, everyone. Leon here with At Home with Music. And there's a little bit of fall in the air. I'm actually recording this in the evening, and it's a little bit cold down here in the studio as I'm recording this up here on the mountain near Asheville. Well, actually in Asheville, kind of on the outskirts. Anyway, welcome to this video series. This is the introduction to Is Music Important to God? You know, I spent most of my career not only performing in country clubs and, hot restaurants and venues and concert halls, but I was also a church musician. In fact, my first job as a musician was as a church organist back when I was 13 years old. Now, in those days, people, well, even to this day, people think that if you can play the piano, you can play the organ. Which isn't quite true because while I could do the keys okay, I certainly missed having a sustain pedal and I didn't exactly know what to do with my feet. So occasionally my foot would slip and I'd hit one of those low bass notes on the foot pedals and make a funny sound, but I managed to get by. Later on they let me switch to piano, which was more to my liking. So I've been a church pianist, a choir accompanist, a solo accompanist, and I've done that for pretty much from 1971 until the present day. Right now, I'm part of the worship team at our church here in Asheville. And I'm not the leader, but I get to kind of sit in the back and support the other musicians. And I find that to be a tremendous blessing and a great honor to be a part of the music team. As part of my ministry in the church as a musician, I helped lead hymns and worship songs. I accompanied the church choirs. I even wrote arrangements for the choirs. I even wrote an Easter cantata and a Christmas cantata, which you'll probably never hear those again. And my wife Cheryl and I wrote a musical for the youth choir at one point in the 80s that was made up of worship songs that we had written together. And it was during the 60s and 70s that I became aware of praise songs in the church that were different from the hymns. And one of my desires is to teach people in the church about the importance of music. Now, a lot of people know, we sing songs in church. And a lot of people think, well, it's just a warm-up for the sermon. But really, what we sing in church, the kind of music that we use in the church, is so important. And I believe that the Bible has many, many things to say about the use of music in the church. Now, there's a lot of scholarship, some of it of a dubious nature, surrounding the use of music in the church. I've read some articles which say drums should not be used in church. I remember going on tour with the youth choir. This was back in the early 90s. When we were still in Florida, and we were setting up our drums in a church, and this lady came up to me and said, "I don't believe in those drums." And all I could say was, well, there they are. So some people had a problem with using drums. And of course, there are some denominations that don't use any instruments at all. They only sing songs a cappella. There are other churches that will only sing the psalms. There are churches that will only do the old hymns, and then there are other churches that will only sing the contemporary praise songs. And they've got to have a live band with a drummer in a plexiglass cage, electric guitar players, and so on. Now, of course, music in the church, it's a vast subject, just like teaching music history or just teaching about how music works. It's a big subject. We could talk about the history of music in the church. We could talk about how various worldviews have arisen since the dawn of the church that have affected the music that is used in church. We can also talk about the great composers and their relation to the church. Bach, as you may know, wrote a great deal of music for the church. Many of the other great composers like Beethoven and Mozart, they wrote music that was meant to be used in the church. Now, it would take a long time to cover this subject in depth. So my goal in this series is to lay a foundation for you to build on, to get you interested in the use of music in the church and what the Bible has to say about music and musicians. Some of the questions that we want to answer in this series is, what is the purpose of music? How is it used in the scriptures? How can we use music today to glorify God? So what we'll be doing is covering some basic concepts about music in general. Then we'll talk about how music was used in the Old Testament, how it was used in the New Testament, and how there are songs in the Scripture. A lot of people think that the only songs in the Scripture are in the book of Psalms. Well, naturally, that is the Bible's song book. And if I were hard-pressed to name my favorite book in the Bible, it would be the Psalms. They're basically it's a lyric book of all the songs. But there are songs strewn throughout the scriptures, as you will see. And then finally, we'll talk a little bit about why certain types of music are used in church and what that means. I look forward to sharing these things with you. This is something that I have dealt with and have studied pretty much for my entire career. So, thanks for watching. Please consider subscribing to At Home with Music if you haven't already. Let other families know, homeschool families, let them know about this channel, as we hope to provide you with some valuable information and some inspiration